Hello and welcome to another episode of Invalid Entry. My name is James Taylor and today we're going to be talking about one of the other OWASP top 10 categories with a specific example, which is using insecure things. And this is something which is really big. It happens a lot. And this specific one actually happens a lot more than you might expect. I'm going to use it as an example, and there are a million other examples and situations this might occur in. The one I'm going to talk about is FTP, File Transfer Protocol. And I think some context is important here. FTP is a very old protocol. It is 52 years old, and in 2023, so next year will be 53 years old. It is incredibly simple to implement, both as a server or as a client. So sending FTP messages is incredibly easy to do. It is actually predates things like TCP. FTP originally ran over another protocol. It is fundamentally insecure and it should not be used, in my opinion, ever. There might be some edge cases where you go, oh, I've got an embedded system, I don't have much CPU power, I'm doing it on a local network. But even then, these days, those situations are becoming rare and rarer. You don't have a more powerful computer or chip that could run a TLS session or an SFTP session. FTP has problems where you can make a server and you can make a secure server. The server can be as secure as you can make it, in that it doesn't have injection attacks, it doesn't have buffer overflow attacks, it does exactly what it's supposed to do, and yet that server will still have security problems because the protocol itself is insecure. And we're going to do a demonstration of that and to show that actually all the messaging from the client to the server goes in the clear, which means you actually transmit your username and your password in the clear, and also any data that is being sent to the SFTP server or retrieved from the FTP server is also completely in the plain. So anyone listening to the network connection or anyone listening to your local network would be able to receive and get all that information completely. And once they've got username and password, they could just log on themselves and get the data. And it may sound very far-fetched that people are listening to the network, but it happens. It happens a lot. It was happening as far back as the 1980s. In the 1980s, Cliff Stoll, who is credited for catching or helping catch one of the first hackers, being one of the first people to catch a hacker, not necessarily catch the first hacker. And he was using teletypewriters plugged into the network connection. He was actually monitoring the inbound feeds to see what people were connecting, where they were connecting from, and what commands they were typing. So intercepting network traffic is an old technique by both security researchers, forensics people, and malicious actors. It is something that happens. We're beginning to see malicious use of IoT devices that have vulnerabilities then collecting data, collecting network traffic. So if you're using FTP, and I meet people who are still using FTP in anger over the internet, i.e. they are uploading websites via SFTP, they're doing deployments via FTP. I keep saying SFTP, I mean FTP. Never say FTP. And it's subtle because there are actually secure variants of FTP. There are FTPS, and there are other variants. And there's a new protocol called SFTP, Secure FTP. SFTP, which we'll get on to and show a demonstration of that and show how everything's encrypted and you can't see anything, is actually based upon SSH. It's an extension of SSH. That was invented around 97 or 98. So you've got this era here from, it's only the past 30 years, I say 30 years, 25 years, 25 to 30 years where you could use SFTP, which is the main thing we would suggest using now. It is more complex. You do have to run an SSH server. All Linux computers, BSD computers, Macs, Windows computers can run SSH servers. You can now transfer files by SFTP, and there is a wide variety of clients that can do it, and a wide variety of language plugins. So if you needed to send it from a program, you would just get a library which implements SSH or SFTP, and that allow you to send those files in a secure manner. So what we're going to do now is do a demonstration of FTP and just how trivial. Now in my setup, I'm not going to run an FTP server on the internet because I just don't do that. What I have done is I've run a Docker container with an FTP server in, so I am going to connect from localhost to it. There's an element of trust here when I say, look, I can now set my packet, my browser to promiscuous mode, and then collect packets off the entire local network. Or maybe I could have breached my router somehow and just collect packets that go in the router. Those things are not as complex as you might think. So there's an assumption here that when I send a packet out on my computer, it could be sniffed by something other than its intended target. So yeah, I'm going to swap to that mode now. I'm going to show a demo of logging onto an FTP server. I'm just going to show the Wireshark trace of what I'm doing, which isn't the client. And let's just crack on. Okay, so here we go. We've got Wireshark up here. Just so we're all clear, it is doing a trace from localhost to localhost. I put a filter in, so you're not seeing lots of other things going on at the same time. I'm just going to get rid of some of these windows which are behind here. So there's a filter on the 2 ports and or the FTP protocol. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit Quick Connect. I'm going to go into a folder and I'm going to upload a file to the server. I'm going to overwrite that file. And then I might just have a quick view of that file here. So I just view that file, and then I'm going to hit stop on the trace. Let's have a quick look. So in the trace, as you can see, we've tried to log in with username and password, and in fact, straight away here, you see the word user. So this is my username on this server, is user, and the password is password. So straight away, password is 123. Straight away, I've just put my user password in the plane. And then you can sort of see exactly what I was doing. So I was in the current folder / the root of the SFTP server, and it gave me a list of what was on the server. So this here is a list. It swaps to TCP for that to actually give me the information in here. And it said there were some files in here. Then moved into a folder called Thing. So you now know the name of my folder I was in, even though that wasn't on the screen. And it gave another directory listing. So it goes, oh yeah, there is a thing. It actually reauths continuously, so my user and password just gets dumped continuously. And then I decide to send my my file up, which is just a beautiful little thing here. And then later on I fetch it back here, so I'm requesting my secret text here. If I actually nip into the TCP stream here, you'll actually see, or you should see, the contents here should appear. Maybe I've got to add another port. So a quick edit on my filter, so I'm just actually collecting a range of ports here. As we can see here, when I actually say to fetch the file back, as we sort of go through here, these packets, we sort of notice that at some point we actually get a directory sent OK. But as I actually ask for retrieve the secret or text, it actually then here gives me, open it on it, and then it actually gives me the contents of the file. Don't tell anyone this secret. So it has fetched back in the plane the content of it. There's not much to say really. Like, don't use FTP. If you use FTP, your username and password will be in the plane. Often FTP servers are tied into the authentication on the server, so you would expect an FTP server to share the usernames and passwords with the user accounts on the server, which means if someone's captured a username and password on the FTP, they would then be able to log in via presumably Telnet, which is also in the plane. And fundamentally, neither of those two should be turned on. You should not turn Telnet on. You should not turn FTP on. You should use SSH and SFTP in this era. And also, these days, you should use a particular version of SSH. The older versions have security vulnerabilities in their initialization of the crypto and handshakes and things, which allowed them to be hijacked. So I'm now going to show the same demo using SSH and SFTP to transfer the same file. Okay, so here we go. We're going to now transfer a file via SCP, and just for the initialization there is it's trying to do some key exchange away where it's just split screen. I haven't yet typed my password in. They're actually sent the data. And as you can see on my screen right now, every single one of these are encrypted packets. So even here where it's sending data, there is nothing visible that is going on these SSH ports. So everything in here is encrypted. The passwords are, if you go through this carefully, you may occasionally see that it will do you can understand a little bit of what it's doing in terms of the setup of the algorithms and the protocols, because you'll see it does Diffie-Hellman, and it does some key exchanges. So some of the key exchanges can be interpreted if you're very careful, but because it then goes into a Diffie-Hellman exchange, just because you can listen and understand what is being sent, you can't work out the underlying numbers of the math. And that's how Diffie-Hellman works is definitely a different video. So you can see there is a key exchange going on, and the fact that I can see the keys doesn't then mean I can actually see the session key. So these are sort of like the initial server key or the client key, and then you go into your different Diffie-Hellman mode. So at this point, after this, it's almost impossible to actually then work out what the information being sent is. You can guess the first few packets what's going on, because it's SSH, you can know, but after that, when you actually send data, directory listings, or how many files are being pushed, absolutely no information is being leaked after that point, which is kind of handy and kind of funky. You could derive some information if you're very clever. You could look at the sizes being transferred, and that will give you an inkling as to what might be going on, especially also the rate of the data. So the number of packets and the size of the packets might be able to derive that this is a file transfer as opposed to a shell, for example, which might have very distinctive different packet signatures on it or packet sizes. But apart from that, you wouldn't be able to tell what the data was in there. And that's it, really. That's the demonstration. I guess one of the big questions that get asked is how do you know FTP is bad and SFTP is good? These are, and for that matter, is FTPS good or not? Because it's the same letters. Secure, it's got the word secure in it, right? The reality is there's an element of a good cybersecurity person just knows. These are part of the world we live in, though. You just know that is a bad idea to run an FTP server. I think that there's an element of my age creeping in there, that I lived through the era where FTP servers were acceptable, and the mass majority of ways of uploading data to servers was FTP, and we stopped doing that and did SFTP instead. But there's also reality of modern organizations, both small companies and larger companies, should be using tooling which stops you using FTP. You should have cybersecurity products which scan your open ports and say, hey, it looks like this port 21 for FTP is open, and that shouldn't be, because you shouldn't be running an FTP server. And I think that's very important at that point, that when you get these reports back saying, hey, I've got this port open, it's a standard port for FTP, am I running an FTP server? And actually do the research then. So when you get this result come back and a finding, either a pen test or port scan, go, this port looks like it's open, you should do the research to understand why that's a good or bad idea. What have you done that's triggered that alert? Is it a false positive? Are you actually just running something else on that port? Or actually are you doing something bad? And then act on that, and then learn from it and don't repeat it. As I say, the number of FTP servers I hear about, the number of people I know running FTP servers, or that in conversation you discover they're running FTP, you think, why? What they just don't know. They don't understand that it's insecure. They haven't seen it. They haven't done any kind of review of their systems. They haven't looked at these products, and it's an OWASP top 10 thing. Not specifically FTP, but using insecure products or insecure versions of products is so essential that we crack down this. And if you see someone, friends don't let friends run insecure protocols. That should be a thing. And so if you see someone, a colleague, or even another customer, it could be a vendor, it could be a customer that you have, using a FTP server rather than an SFTP server, and also they might not know, they might say FTP and they might be running an SFTP server. It's a very easy mistake to make, but just check and go, hey, is it actually an FTP server? And if it is, maybe we should upgrade that now to a better thing. I've seen people run FTP servers by accident as well. I've seen people have an FTP server as well as an SFTP server, and it's just, I would just turn that off. Just just don't do that anymore. So that's it for today. Hopefully that was a bit more helpful in demonstrating of something that is it should be known by people that this is a plaintext protocol. And as I say, it was invented back in an era where cybersecurity just wasn't even a consideration. People weren't really thinking about malicious users. There weren't that many computers connected on what would have been the ARPANET. Everybody there was a kind of trusted resource because there were university academic students. They were all kind of sharing the same resources. It's like saying your housemates, you kind of trust them, so you get to a point where there's why write hyper-secure protocols if there's no need? We didn't have the CPU powers to be able to do things. We didn't understand that. It was only when the internet started being formed and suddenly the number of people on it increased that you started getting malicious actors, even playfully malicious, not malicious, but playfully mischievous actors started coming out the woodworks a bit more, back in the 80s especially, that we started thinking about secure protocols and securing things at a protocol level. And as I say, people like Cliff Stoll has documented that he was listening to network packets in 86, 87 of all connections. So that's it for today. If you enjoyed this, please hit like, please subscribe, and I'll see you again tomorrow for another episode.